Hi everyone, and welcome to my session, DBAs versus developers, give this a chance. So before I start, let me tell you, you can use the chat to share your thoughts, comments, whatever, and you can use the Q&A tab to ask questions. I will answer questions at the end of the talk if you have any. Okay, so let's start. Okay, I think you already see my slides. So DBAs versus developers give this a chance. Well, I think the topic is very familiar to a lot of you because in most companies I see these patterns. DBAs hate developers and developers hate DBAs. If you don't see this pattern in your company, please write it in the chat. And actually, I would be very curious to know why, or I don't know what you did to solve the problem. By the way, so sorry, I am struggling to move my slides. Oh, okay. Actually, I should. Okay, sorry. Let me fix the problem in this way. I should actually use the slides in this way. Before I start the talk, well, the traditional "Who am I?" slide. Well, I'm Federico, founder of Vettabase. I'm passionate with databases in general, open source, recently even AI. You can see what I write on Vettabase website or on my personal blog, federicosthoughts.com, or you can email me privately if you prefer, or you can find me on LinkedIn. So this is the image that I got from ChatGPT when I asked it to illustrate the conflict between DBAs and devs. It's not too bad. I mean, it was a stupid request and I got a stupid image. This is the image I got from Claude, from Gemini, and this actually sucks, let me be honest, because mostly because of what they say. No SQL for you, commit to this, production done, and people are destroying their own computers instead of each other's computers. But anyway, and finally, this is from Claude. It's the worst of all, or maybe not, because, at least they say something sensible. DBAs say, optimize your queries, and developers say, but it works on my machine. And then they run select asterisk, and they have no documentation, and DBAs care a lot about backups. It's a bit biased, but still not completely wrong. Okay, we have this conflict, but let's start by saying why we have these conflicts. We have it because developers and DBAs have different priorities, right? So developers have some tasks to finish, right? They have a sprint, and before the sprint ends, they need to finish some tasks. Typically, these tasks are new features for the application or bugs that affect directly the user. Okay, like I click this and nothing happens. Occasionally, they might have some refactoring or some code improvements suggested by the developers themselves, but not databases related refactoring usually. DBA priorities are completely different. DBAs want a database to be more stable, faster, more scalable, meaning that they have proper redundancy, good replication, good clusters. They want it to be clean and well documented. Well, some DBAs actually don't care too much about the schema, but others do. And if they care about the schema, they definitely want it to be clean and well documented. And when the database crashes during the night, of course, the DBAs have to wake up and take action. So again, about developers. Developers understand which benefits code refactoring would bring, and they can argument the importance of these when they talk to their team lead or CTO. So they will sometimes listen, sometimes they won't. But when they listen, the tasks will be added to the next sprint. The problem is most developers don't know much about databases, and especially they don't like databases. So they never propose, schema refactoring or rewriting some bad queries or something like that. Also, developers like abstraction. They like to think about the database as something that they don't see and just lies behind the framework they use. But does this approach always work? Well, think about assembly. No application is written in assembly. No developer likes to write a whole complex application in assembly, right? At least I don't think they do. But they have to use it sometimes in certain fields. I don't know, developers who do gaming or I don't know, complex animations. I suppose they occasionally have to use assembly. So it's not that database is special. It's that in general, even if there are some things that you can abstract, there are times you can't only rely on the abstraction. You have to code at a lower level and make sure that things happen in the most optimal way to gain good performance for your application. So it's something that it's been like that since the beginning of computer science, right? So given this difference of priorities and views, we have this conflict, and I kind of stereotyped it here in this way. DBA says, your query doesn't use an index, it reads 10 million rows only to return 2 rows. It materializes temporary tables in memory. It takes 2 minutes to run. And basically, it forced me to wake up at 3 a.m. last night, optimize this query, damn it. And the developers will reply something like, oh, but my spring is already full, and I can't optimize this query because it's generated by our ORM. And anyway, that query runs fast on my laptop, so probably there is something wrong with your server. It's your fault, not mine, basically. Now, don't misunderstand me. developers have some points, and they have a great point, which is their sprint is already full. They don't decide what they do, right? They have managers, typically. So CTOs are the ones who define the priorities in a company. But the CTOs see the values of new features. They only see the value of refactoring when it's explained to them properly, like, okay, if we want to develop new features on the front end, we need to refactor these and these, otherwise it will take 2 weeks just to start. But they don't understand the need for optimizing something as obscure as a database. And they perceive these kind of optimizations as nerd work, which would increase the theoretical quality of the application. So it's theoretically good, but in practice, they don't see any business benefit. So if you as a DBA will go to the CTO and say, okay, we should do this and this because the database is too slow, or it's I don't know, it's using too much CPU just to run this stupid transaction. Well, the CTO will not approve your proposal typically. But again, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that CTOs are stupid. Maybe some CTOs are stupid, but I'm not saying that CTOs in general are stupid, right? They also have priorities. They also have a manager, which is typically the CEO. Yes, the CTO is a C-level, but typically in a company, they're the least C-level of all. So basically, they have to explain why they do things. They have to explain it to people who sometimes don't understand what they say, actually. And if they use a lot of resources for something, at some point, someone will go to them and say, you shouldn't have done this, you should have used the resources for that and that, even if they don't even understand what they did. Unfortunately, they are in a bad situation often, just like developers and DBAs. But in this situation, basically, who is the winner? Well, as you can guess, the winner is developers. They will probably disagree. If some developers are listening, some will probably think, it's not true, come on. Last month, the DBA came to us and forced us to optimize a query that was generated by an ORM and took 2 minutes, and it joined 15 tables, and we didn't even have any idea what it did or how or why. But you see, these kind of objections contain the answer to, right? If that is the situation, it means that the company is not paying attention to the database's quality, and it's not paying attention to what the DBAs say. But then, if that's the case, the real winner, maybe it's not developers, maybe it's no one. Because this is not a good situation for the whole company. It will lead to databases that are unmanageable for DBAs, but also for developers, and it will lead to a lot of business problems. But before I go to that, at this point of the presentation, maybe you will feel a bit frustrated and sad, right? So let me tell you about a small consolation we have, small but cool, actually. Do you know that a DBA Appreciation Day exists? You can see the official website here in my slide. I think this year it already happened, but it happens every year. So next year you can share it in advance with your company and ask them to give you a box of candies or something like that. Okay. And this is actually what ChatGPT produced when I asked it to illustrate the DBA Appreciation Day. I suppose it's kind of offensive, but I will just share it without any comment. Just because, after all, it's funny. Now, back to the problems. So why does this problem matter for your business? Okay, it matters a lot for DBAs, but well, it matters a lot for developers too, but it should matter for the whole company. And I want to communicate this because I think that the problem won't be solved until managers and CTO in particular understand that this situation is bad for business. Well, the first obvious thing that I might say is that employees' frustration should always matter. But we all know that this is typically not something that managers listen to, right? They should care about people frustration, but many of them don't, or they theoretically do, but in practice don't know what to do. So in practice, this is a weak argumentation. But there are others. So when your database is low, or when you have a database outage, of course, the application will always be slow or will have an outage, or at least a partial outage if you use microservices well. If you use them well. If you use microservices but not very well, any microservice that is down will probably cause the whole application to be down. And this means a lot of things for your business. Okay. First of all, the users will leave the page even if it's just slow. There are a lot of studies about this made by Google or Amazon. I didn't provide the links here because they are a bit old now. But you can Google for them if you're curious, and you will see that the numbers are impressive. A lot of users tend to leave the page if it's more slow than a short threshold. And if they leave the page, of course, they don't buy your product. Some of them will never come back, which is even worse. It means you didn't lose a sale, you lost the entire lifetime value of a customer. And then the Google page rank might decrease if it happens too often, if your website is generally slow, or if Google notices that so many times your website is down, well, it will rank poorly in the results pages. And it's also bad for hiring, because the good candidates will look at your website, they will see it's slow, and they might say, what kind of company is this? And maybe it's not even a fair judgment. Maybe your company is interesting for other reasons, but they will not proceed with the interviews if they think it's not a good place to work in, right? And then there can be a lot of other minor reasons, or reasons that are more specific to your business. But trust me, I could have written a very long list if I wanted to. But I think that these motivations are strong enough. The problem is that measuring the monetary impact of these problems is a bit hard. or maybe impossible, but with the help of data analysts, it's possible to make an estimation. So CTOs should definitely ask the data people to write and to estimate the money loss they have in case of website slowness or even outage. And once they have the numbers, they could rationally decide how many resources they should allocate to optimize the database, the queries, and so on. So in the short term, once they decide how many resources to allocate, in the short term, they should eliminate the queries that do nothing. And what do I mean? This is a bit surprising. I know that most of people don't think about this, but in a typical production environment, I always see queries that always return an error. When I say always, I mean a query could have different parameters, like where ID equals 24 or where ID equals 42. But in all cases, they just return an error. And this means these queries do nothing, never. And they could be eliminated, okay, because whatever they were supposed to do, they are not doing it. Probably they are a leftover from a feature that changed or was eliminated completely. I don't know. Another kind of do nothing query is queries that don't return results. A select that doesn't return any result is useless. But if you look at your queries, it's very likely you will find some queries that never return any result. Then you can identify the slowest and most frequently run SQL queries. Well, maybe the slowest are not always relevant because maybe you have very slow queries that run once every night, and that's totally okay. But maybe you have less slow queries that run very, very, very often, like many times every second. And in that case, you will need to optimize them to increase the general speed and health and resource usage of your database. Of course, you need to optimize them. And then you should periodically, not just once, but periodically erase the unused indexes or duplicate indexes. More often than not, I see actually unused or duplicate indexes. You should avoid long transactions. This is something that developers should do, of course, because they know the logic. They know why a transaction exists, what it's supposed to do, and why they needed to enclose several operations into a single transaction. Since they know the logic, they also know how to possibly split this query, how to optimize the logic itself. And then they can also use advanced SQL queries to run less queries. Okay. Occasionally, this is even more important than optimizing queries, because if you run many queries, when you can run actually less queries, well, obviously you have a lot of overhead, not just for the query execution, but also for the network communication. I mean, this might be a bit obscure, but I can give you an example. Maybe you insert a row, but you want to avoid inserting duplicates. So typically, applications run a select to check if the row exists, and then they run an insert. But instead of doing that, they might run an insert and then check if it returns an error. There is no drawback with that. In the long term, I think the company can do even more important things. Developers should learn about query optimization. They don't want to, I know, but trust me on one thing. I often do query optimization trainings for developers. I like to do them personally. And I can tell you that when developers start to think what happens when they run a query, they realize that after all, it's all about algorithms, right? A query execution is an algorithm, and it's basically very close to their job. And it's a fascinating topic. Developers tend to like databases when you start to explain them how databases work. And in one case, I had a very happy feedback, which was after your training, we stopped using an ORM for new microservices. I was very happy when I heard this because I know how convenient ORMs can be for developers, and knowing that some of them now prefer to write SQL manually, thanks to my training, made me very, very, very proud. And other things companies can do are implementing a schema change acceptance process. So, for example, there should be some automation that some automation that checks the changes you are going to run. For example, if you are going to create, I don't know, a table without a primary key, there should be some kind of error saying, okay, this is not a good practice. Okay, you should also be allowed to force it if you have a good reason to do that. But normally you should get some error or warning. And then they should implement a process to identify slow queries in staging, because when you identify them in production, you are already experiencing some kind of damage, right? They already slowing down the website. Maybe you know that a query is slow because it caused an incident and a DBA woke up at 3 a.m. at night, right? You don't want to do that when it's too late. You want to know that queries are slow when they are still in staging, if possible. But of course, to do that, you should have proper staging environments with enough data. If you have small tables on staging, well, all queries will be fast. And it's not developers' fault if staging databases are small, right? Some advice for DBAs. Please don't hate developers. Understand that if they behave in a certain way, there is a reason. They are not stupid, okay? They do a complex job. They generally do it well. And if they don't listen to you, it's because of the reasons I explained before. Don't treat them as a bunch of idiots, and don't even secretly hate them, because it's not a good mindset, in my opinion. Don't have many robust discussions with them. Ask for a meeting. Ask for a single meeting where you explain what is happening, you explain your reasons, you propose solutions. Okay, that has some chances to solve the problem. Keeping doing discussions rarely helps. Keep calm and explain the developers what they don't understand. Okay, as I said, most of them don't understand databases. Maybe they don't understand that creating an index on every column is not helping. Okay, not because they're stupid, but because no one ever explained it to them. And if you just assume that they're stupid because they don't already know that, the discussion will not be very productive. It doesn't matter if you're right. In the end, you will not achieve the goal, which is having better indexes in the future. Show them facts. Don't say this query sucks. Say, look at this graph. Your query takes up to 5 seconds. It shouldn't. If you build this index, it will take, I don't know, 0.02 seconds, which is very good. You should learn how to build indexes in the proper way, and then find a solution for that. Find a way to teach them. Okay, I'm half serious here, but propose Vettabase query optimization courses, for example. Jokes apart, whatever, solve the long-term problem. And then, okay, this is my last slide, actually. I know giving a talk, even on a topic like this, is easy, but changing the culture is hard. People always worked in that way, and changing the processes is not something that you can do in one day or in one sprint. But someone has to start to do it, right? Otherwise, we will always have this conflict, which will always be bad for everyone's mental health and for businesses and so on. So try to explain these things to your developers. Try to talk to your CTOs. Let me know how it goes, maybe. If you have any thoughts and you want to write them in the chat, if you want to share your experiences or even rants, I will be very happy to read them in the chat. If you have questions about how I dealt with certain problems in the past or whatever, please ask. Actually, this is my last slide, the question time. So I will wait for 1 minute and see if someone asks something. Otherwise, this is the end of my talk.
Thank you, Federico. I see that there are no questions in the chat and no questions in the Q&A either. So yeah, I like the aspect that you said that don't be mad at developers and developers don't be mad at DBAs, because actually it's true, because DBAs, I think quite often they assume that developers should know basic things like what indexes mean, why are they applied, and so on and so forth, but not all developers do that, DBAs see everything through their lens, and we need to see everything through the lens of developers as well. So it was a nice presentation. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, on this topic, I can say that before starting Vettabase, when I worked in companies as a DBA, I generally managed to build good relationships with developers. I managed to create situations where they came to me when they didn't know how to do something properly, or when they had some problems that didn't know how to solve. And I think that's the kind of situation a DBA should create. Not complaining because a query is slow, but having developers seeing you as a database expert, coming to you to ask questions, and actually wanting to collaborate with you to improve the quality of the database and the application in general.
I think the developers are the ones that often complain to DBAs why a database is slow. But I think that things are improving right now, like especially these days, especially with AI developers using like AI, and I think more and more people will start understanding both sides. Oh, there's just one question that just came from Jimmy Angelakos. He spoke before. So he says, how should DBAs make themselves more approachable? Some DBAs are afraid of message overload, for example, via Slack or email.
Right. Well, I think it depends a lot on how the company works. If it's online, or I mean, if it's a remote team, or if it's a team working in an office. Working in an office has so many drawbacks, but it helps relationships. So use this occasion to drink coffee with developers who did something wrong, and having not a rude chat, but a constructive chat on how to do things. Try to interest them into the problems. But when the team is remote, or anyway they receive a lot of messages on Slack or email, well, they can probably propose to have meetings, even if they are remote virtual meetings. It's better than nothing. The thing is, try not to have meetings with, I don't know, 20 people, maybe even 10 people can be too much, because if most of the people don't interact with you, the result could be poor. Try to have meetings with selected individuals, and discuss what they need to know from you. Does it make sense, Jimmy?
It makes sense for me, and I guess it makes sense for Jimmy. Let's see if anyone writes anything in the chat. No, there's just one question from Jimmy. I think it does make sense, at least for me. I'm not sure about Jimmy, but I think it should make sense for him as well. So thank you. I think in the track number 1, we now have, let me see.
Thank you, Lucas. Thank you for everyone who attended. Enjoy a long coffee break before the next great talks.